This is April and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for visiting here today and I hope you enjoy the video. Today I am going to be demonstrating how to make an easy shaker card for Halloween. If you're like me and struggle with making shaker cards, I think this technique will help. Also, it's not limited to Halloween cards, but can be used for many holidays and card designs. So let's go ahead and get into it. This is an example of one that I made before, and now we're going to make a new card using the same technique. First, I'm going to take a piece of black cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. For this card, I'm using the Gina K Black Onyx cardstock, and I'm using my Tim Holtz guillotine cutter to go ahead and trim that down. I'll save that other half for my card base later. Next, I'm going to use my Life Changing ink blending brushes and Distress Oxide inks to blend on the background. You don't have to do this part, but I just wanted to spruce up the card instead of leaving it blank and black. I am going to be using the colors Ripe Persimmon and Salty Ocean. I really wanted a dark blue for this card, but I only have Salty Ocean, so I'm using what I have, and that's partly why I'm blending on the black cardstock, so it'll tone down the color a bit. And I just grabbed a piece of scrap paper, and I think I mentioned I'm using the Life Changing ink blending brushes to go ahead and add ink to that background. Also, since these are the oxide inks, I love adding water droplets to them. So after I finish doing all of the ink blending, I'm going to go ahead and add some droplets of water. My tiny little water bottle, I was using it and I kept on spraying. There's not much in it, and honestly I was just too lazy to get up and go refill it, so I ended up grabbing my larger water bottle and maybe getting a few more water droplets than I meant to, but oh well, there it goes. Anyhow, after I add the water, I'm just quickly going to run my heat tool over the paper just so I can dry it before I move on to the next step, which will be die cutting, and I don't want it, too soft. So later I'm going to be mounting this onto a card base, and I want some of the base to peek out, so I'm just going to trim this cardstock down to 4 inches by 5 1/4. So there's a 1/4 inch border that goes all the way around. And yeah, see that really, really nice ink blending on the black cardstock. That's why I like the oxide inks, is that they do show up on darker cardstock, and I actually forget that, and I forget to use them in that way. So just something to keep in mind. But again, I'm just trimming this down so later it can fit very nicely. Now for the shaker card, instead of using foam tape, what I really want to do is take a slightly quicker approach. So I'm going to use craft foam, and I found it's quick and easy to use, and foam tape is kind of pricey, and this is a cost-effective way of still creating great shaker cards. I like to pick up large sheets like this from a local craft store, and I cut it down to whatever size I need. I'm using black, but I usually purchase black and white, so I have a variety for my different colors of cardstock. So I have just cut a piece of foam already, and I've cut it just slightly smaller than that black piece of cardstock. I actually realized that it was still just a little bit too big, so I'm going to go ahead and trim that down, and that's going to be the base underneath that cardstock. So next, I actually need to cut the window frame for my shaker card, and I'm using a rectangle die to cut a window in both the cardstock and the piece of craft foam. This is the Lawn Fawn. I thought for the first card I had used a Lawn Fawn rectangle die set, but it's actually the Lawn Fawn rectangle frame set. So it cuts a frame, but it also cuts a really nice triangle. Also, you're going to see me here attempting to find the center of the card, and I don't know why. I did this on the back. I literally have no idea what I was doing here, and then I got so confused. I started doing this and realized it was just kind of pointless. I ended up just eyeballing where I was going to put the die, and I think it ended up being just a little bit off center. So don't do what I did. That totally did not work at all, but oh well. So yeah, I just ended up taking the die, kind of eyeballing it to be honest, and putting it down with purple tape so that I could go ahead and run it through my die cut. I did put it on top of the foam. I am using my Gemini die cut machine. It's very powerful. I was really hoping it was going to cut through both the cardstock and the foam together. So I ran it through. It kind of cut through it. I ended up having to run it through with the foam by itself a second time to go ahead and cut out the full rectangle. I ended up being okay though. Okay, so now I actually have the frames, both frames cut, and we still need the clear pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 2 pieces of acetate to be slightly larger, or slightly smaller, sorry, than those frames so that they can make the front and the back. For acetate, I really like to use this heat resistant acetate by Hot Off the Press. It comes in packs of 5 sheets, 8.5 by 11. And what I like is that it is heat resistant and embossable. So if you wanted to emboss on the acetate for a shaker card, which a lot of people I know do, it would be a great time to do it. So now I have my acetate cut, and I decided that instead of having black showing behind, I really wanted to put a really nice piece of pattern paper for the backing of my shaker card, like in the example at the beginning. So I went through trying to find some paper that would really work. For my pattern paper, I'm actually using a piece from the American Crafts Pink Paisley Spellcast paper pad. I found this paper pad at Tuesday Morning a couple of months ago and absolutely fell in love with it. It's a 6x6 paper pad. It has 36 sheets with 18 different designs, and they are geared towards Halloween. But what I love about the paper pad is that so many of the designs are elegant, and I think they can be used for other card designs after Halloween is over. And the name is just cool, Spellcast. Plus, you can see a lot of them have this lovely gold foil on it, which I am absolutely in love with. So the Spellcast paper pad is part of a product line from Pink Paisley, and when I went back to Tuesday Morning recently, I found this stamp set here, 2 stamp sets that match the paper, and an ephemera packet that has all of these really cool paper bits, and I'll be using some of these later for the title on my card, and also to add a little bit of extra ephemera to the front of the card. Lovely vintage feel. So I decided on that really, really pretty piece with the moon and the stars. I thought that just screamed just Halloween and just kind of a vintage feel. And I'm going to trim that down so it's slightly smaller once again than that frame, and it will fit perfectly. And I'm just trimming it down now so I know I have the sizing correct. So at this point, if you were going to emboss on your acetate sheet, this would be the time to do it before we assemble the shaker card. You would not want to do it after, it would just be a little bit more difficult, but I'm not going to be embossing on my acetate for this particular card. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding double-sided tape to the back of the frame because we're going to start building the shaker card. So I just skipped ahead. I added all of the tape. You don't need to watch me put the tape on. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the backing. And after I remove the backing, I am going to be taking the first piece of acetate and I'm going to be adhering that to the back. And now we have our window front. Yay! We're one step in. So the next thing is I'm adding even more double-sided tape to the back of this, just to the part where the frame is, not the opening where you'll be able to see the shaker card. And I'm doing that so that I can add the foam bit that we cut earlier, this foam window frame. That's going to act as the stand-in for the foam tape. So instead of foam tape, we're adding the foam frame, and it will be a more flat shaker card, but you'll see that the pieces will still move very, very well. And I'm just going to try to adhere that the best way possible. I always get really tripped up on getting the frame on just properly. Sometimes I try to do it by putting the paper onto the frame, sometimes the frame into the paper, and I'm so sorry because my head did get in the way there. But yes, now we have the dimension that we'll need to actually make the shaker card. And now that I just about have that stuck on, what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to be adding even more tape to the foam frame, because after we add the tape to the foam frame, we're going to have to add the shaker bits inside. I think I'm having some difficulty here actually getting the frame adhered. The nice thing is the tape is pretty forgiving until you peel it back up. So there, I'm going to be adding more tape to the frame, and I really want to make sure that this is just on really well, because this is what we're going to be using to hold the entire card together. All of the sandwiches we're creating, it'll keep the shaker bits in place. And I should mention that the tape I'm using is score tape, although halfway through I ran out, and I have another brand that I'll link down below that I found at Tuesday Morning, and that is a 1/4 inch double-sided tape. So now my favorite part, adding the shaker elements. I have these black jelly gems from Queen & Co. that I'm adding. They're from their toppings. And I have this Recollections star confetti that I'll also link down below. Found that at Michael's. And these are small enough to go in the shaker card. And I'm just putting it in my coffee filter first so I can get it all mixed up. A tip I picked up from a Jennifer McGuire video. And then I'm going to put it into the center of my shaker element. I already removed the release, and now, very carefully without spilling anything, I always spill something at this point, but I did okay this time. The second piece of acetate I'm going to put right down, and I'm just taking the back side of my Tim Holtz craft pick there. I like to use it to really make my tape stick, seal it in. So now the shaker part is done. Yes, just put it on the white cardstock there so you can actually see it. So now we still have to put the back. So remember that piece of paper that I cut earlier with the moon and stars? Now I'm going to adhere that to the back, and then we can assemble the rest of the card. So I am going to add double-sided tape to the back of this first, because it'll have to stick to the card base, and it might be more difficult to add the tape later. So I'm going to put tape all over the back of this piece of pattern paper first. And then I'm going to add tape, sorry, it's a little out of frame there, but I'm going to be adding tape to the back of the shaker window so that I can go ahead and adhere the piece of pattern paper to the back. And that's what will show through instead of the black cardstock that we're going to mount all of this onto. So I'm just taking off the release paper from the back, and then I'm going to add the pattern paper. And now our complete shaker element, it's all done. I would love that part. Alright, so I'm putting that aside just for a second. I'm taking that extra piece of Gina K Black Onyx cardstock that I had, and it measures right now, I think that is, I think that's 8.5 by 5.5, and I just scored it so that it folds hamburger style. So I have a 5.5 by 4.25 folding card, and then to the front of that, I'm adhering this entire shaker element that we just put together using that double-sided tape on the back that I previously added to the pattern paper. And I'm going to adhere that to the front, and I'm adding just a little bit of extra. I just saw on the edge that it was just a little spare space, and I just really don't want the shaker element to fall off the front. I don't think it will, but I just rather safe than sorry. So see, now we have the nice border, and I'm just also rubbing it in really well, pressing down hard, making sure it's really sticking. All right, now it's done. So I need to add a sentiment to my card, and since I decided not to stamp directly onto the acetate, I'm going to adhere a sentiment to the front, and I was just trying to figure out from this ephemera set that I showed earlier what could work. Also, when I did the die cut for my frame, I realized that my purple tape, when I peeled it off, it tore the bottom half, and I was trying to figure out what I could put that could also cover up the tear on the frame. I don't know if you saw that big black spot there. I didn't know how to cover it, so I thought, okay. So I'm just playing around with the ephemera, kind of seeing what works. There's a lot of really fun pieces in there with a lot of different words. I wanted to pick something that wouldn't fully cover up the shaker element because that's the fun part of the card. So I didn't want something too big, but I also didn't want something too small that it just seemed like it was just a shaker without an actual sentiment on it. And there I'm trying to cover up that spot there. I'm like, I'm going to put a black cat on it. No, that's not going to work. And I keep on coming back to the All I See Is Magic sentiment. I really, really like that one. And the nice thing about these sentiments is so many of them have that gold foiling on it, and it just really makes it pop, and it matches these gold stars that I have. So I actually ended up settling on the All I See Is Magic and the moon, but then I remembered that I wanted to add a frame to the outside. So I'm taking the next size up for that Lawn Fawn frame die set that I used earlier, and I'm just going to cut a frame from one of these pieces of pattern paper. I settled on this really pretty orange one that has the gold foiling, and it's just going to be a nice frame to go around and add an extra pop of color to the card. So I went ahead and put that through my die cut machine. I had the frame. I didn't take the extra step to add any extra dimension to the frame. I'm just going to let it go flat because this card already has dimension with the foam frame underneath. So I'm just going to adhere that, and I actually have a double-sided tape that is 1/8 inch. For small frames like this, I totally recommend this tape. I'm going to link it down below. Score Tape sells it. Other brands sell it. It is small, and you would think, why would I use something that small? But it comes in handy so much, especially for this frame. Every time I use these frames, I'm so grateful that I have this tape because the 1/4 inch is just a little big for it. But the eighth inch, oh my gosh, is perfect. So I'm just using my Tilmholtz craft pick, one of my favorite tools, to go ahead and take the release paper off of the double-sided tape, and then I'm going to adhere the frame onto the front of my card. I'm also hoping this will partially cover up that black spot at the bottom. And adding frames, you know, it's a really nice extra way to just add a finishing touch to your cards also. That's the other thing. It just gives another little layer of dimension. So at this point, I needed to add my sentiment, and I needed to add whatever else. So these are the elements I like the most. Decided not to go with the witch. Just trying to find something that will work. And I really want the sentiment to kind of stand out. What I ended up doing was putting the All I See Is Magic right in the center, which I really liked. And then adding that really, 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 really cute moon at the bottom. I don't know why I like that moon so much. I think because it just goes with the background of the paper, which is moon and stars, and then I put the gold stars in the center also. I did decide to pop up the sentiment. I know I wasn't going to add more dimension, but I decided to use some foam dots to pop up the All I See Is Magic sentiment. Went ahead and took the release paper off of that, and I'm just adding it to the center of the card. Sorry, my head got in the way there. You can see my purple hair. And then I decided not to pop up. I decided to not pop up the moon, but I did want to add some little sparkle. In hindsight, I could have added the sparkle after I glued it on. I'm using my Nuvo Aqua Shimmer Pen, which is my new favorite shimmer pen to use, and I'm adding a ton of sparkle to Mr. Moon here. And then I'm going to just use my tape runner. I decided not to use double-sided tape on it. I wanted to really make sure he stuck down, so I'm using the tape runner to cover the entire back. I use the Kikuyo Long Dot Liner tape runner. Best thing ever. You can buy it on Amazon. I'll link it below. But I'm just going to go ahead and then, because I didn't let it dry fully because I was just being impatient, my fingers wiped off a little glimmer, so I'm adding a little bit more. And when I was looking at the card, and I don't know, I don't know if it's just because I'm like just super girl or whatever. I'm just super girly, but I love glitter. And so I decided to add more shimmer just on the inside part of the frame there, not on the outside. I thought maybe adding it on the outside would be kind of a lot. Plus, I did already do the ink blending, which I really like looking at. The blue and the orange is very muted, but I did want to add some extra shimmer. So I decided to go all around the inside there, and I just kept on coloring and pushing out the shimmer until basically until the entire inside was covered. And then I added more. And I kept on adding more. And this is sped up, so I really added a lot. Final touches are important. So kind of just letting that dry. And then the very last thing is I'll need somewhere to write. So I'm just cutting a piece of white cardstock using my tape runner and just adding that to the inside. And then it's all done. So that is the Halloween shaker card. I really hope you found this video helpful and fun to watch. I have included links to all of the supplies and tools that I used below in the notes section. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments section below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.